Thank you so much for joining. This is the part of our industry chat where we'll be discussing the adoption of cloud and streaming technology, specifically during a global pandemic, which we've all found ourselves in. I think we have a unique opportunity in the world right now to not only share our products and our services, but our knowledge in the space to help make this technology as adoptable as possible across industries. So really looking forward to this conversation and to kind of start it off with some introductions, as I'm obviously not alone. To quickly introduce myself, my name is Alessandra. I'm Zype's Director of Business Development. So I focus on channel partner strategy across technology partners and platforms. I've been with the company for just over 2 years and I am headquartered in New York. Ian, I'll pass it to you if you would introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks Alessandra. My name is Ian McPherson. I manage our partner relationships in the media and entertainment vertical for AWS.
Hi everybody, my name is Willem de Sager. I'm head of North America for the sales at TeoPlayer, focusing on channel sales as well as key accounts.
Wonderful, and Teo and AWS are, wonderful partners of Zype, and looking forward to hearing their perspectives of the market as well. So we've kind of aligned this to be a casual discussion and chat. Figured that a good kind of starting point would be to chat about how the current world situation has really affected the adoption of cloud and streaming technology. Obviously a large question, but if anyone has any initial thoughts, please feel free to take it away.
Sure. So from my perspective, we've seen a real increase in the volume of activity around our customers and our partners, looking to find ways to virtualize the way they work and the way they work on content, but also in rapidly increasing the desire for getting more content to people through streaming. So video has become the coin of the realm here. And as we can see now, what was once one alternative to face-to-face meetings now is the only alternative. So whether it's how you work, where you work, or what you work on, I think we're seeing a lot of people now looking at the cloud as making this widely available, on demand, always accessible, and easy to implement because they're not having to actually stand up, procure, configure infrastructure to make it happen.
Yeah, fully agree, Ian. And adding to that, what I have seen over the past 2 months is indeed that big shift to more adoption of cloud and streaming technology, where in the past it was for some market segments more a roadmap item to move to OTT and streaming in the future. It now suddenly became a hard requirement and a must-have on the short term. Very good examples of customers and prospects here were cinemas, education and learning platforms, everything event and live-based like festivals, but also corporate events, town halls, 360 VR use cases. But one that I really wanted to emphasize was the cinemas. For example, one of prospects where I spoke to was, their revenues all of a sudden became zero, right? Because nobody could go to the cinema anymore. So where there was the long-term goal to become a streaming platform as well, all of a sudden every management member wanted to have it solved now, right? Because they didn't see any revenue coming in. So that was very interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that. And we have a few customers in that space that were customers pre-global pandemic, but it's kind of to tie in both your points where it's industries that maybe weren't heavily adopted into the streaming world. There were a few that were kind of pioneers. Those ones we're seeing, I think our average increase in engagement is like 150%. Some of our customers are seeing like 3,000% increase of engagement across these platforms. So I think, the people or the companies that were the early adopters or in transitioning are now getting the benefit of seeing this increased engagement, but then the new players realizing oh yeah, it's not a Q4 thing, it's a now thing, that there's a really large potential there as well.
Yeah, and it really, I think, speaks to need for companies to think about how they engage customers
Yeah.
and what the new rules of engagement are. And so for M&E, we've been delivering video over through the cloud for a number of years now, and some of the largest platforms run on us. But when you think about what it means to enterprises now who've got distributed workforces that they need to foster collaboration with, or what it means for brands who are used to and relying on people being in stores. I mean, it's a terrible outcome for our economy, and it's really painful for a lot of workers. So you hate to see that kind of disruption forcing growth in your industry. But the current conditions are making those difficult decisions a little bit easier, because now that they have alternatives where video is generally available and can be easily stood up and streamed just about everywhere.
Completely agree. And I think we're almost at even though it feels like we've been in quarantine for years, I do think that this is, kind of just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to our industry maturing and the adoption of it becoming more of like a household component, where people who maybe aren't in the industry are now learning about AWS and TioPlayer, and there's a large educational component that is going to have to happen to like a larger section of the world than just the hardcore infrastructure engineers.
Right. Well, I'm curious too for Zype. I mean, we're sitting on a Zoom call right now. How do you see the presence of these kinds of collaboration tools integrating with your technology? Are you seeing broadcasting of corporate conversations and chats for intranet use, those kinds of applications?
Yeah, it's been interesting, and something that I think we've tried to be as flexible and adaptable as possible, where we had a huge influx in inbound requests, and we want to help and process them and understand their needs, and okay, what does our platform do and where do we need to evolve to then fit the needs as well? It's a new market. So we are able to ingest a stream from something like Zoom, where there's the one-to-one conferencing where, say, a fitness instructor wants to have their class, but then they want to stream it in a higher quality across their apps. We've adapted and been able to ingest those streams and really provide that solution. Well, we're not a one-to-one, video conferencing tool. We're more so a one-to-many. We're able to integrate and try to give them an interface that they're used to, and now most of the world is running on Zoom, but then give them a broadcast quality, really robust infrastructure to extend it. So it's been interesting for sure.
That's great.
Any other thoughts before we move on? I think that there's obviously, you could talk about how the world situation is.
I could talk about it for a long time, but no, I think from AWS's perspective, we didn't realize there was this event on the horizon, but we've been working really hard to provide a reliable global infrastructure that supports video specifically. And so, it's at least it feels rewarding that we're at the right place at the right time, even if it's a bad circumstance that brings us here.
Agreed. Honestly, I think it's then comes into the almost corporate responsibility to make it accessible and to educate really kind of what's worked in the past and how do we then adapt to then serve this larger market. So I think that kind of falls in nicely to the second kind of thought point was, how are we, when I say we, the streaming industry, making it easier or more difficult to adopt new cloud-based infrastructure as a part of their business model? I know we had said, for cinemas, for example, this wasn't their key component of their business model, but now it might be. So what are your guys' thoughts on what our approach kind of is today?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, the cloud-based infrastructure of the streaming industry makes it easier for our customers to be competitive. What we, for example, had for a while, but have seen an increasing need for, is volume-based pricing, meaning that when a customer doesn't do large volumes, he doesn't have to pay a lot. And I think media companies, particularly, but all companies in general, don't like huge fixed costs before trying out new products. And I think that's a big advantage of the whole cloud-based infrastructure and of the streaming industry, that you can give that intrinsic pay-as-you-go and pay-as-you-grow model, which a lot of our customers like. I think it's really important for us as technology providers for these media companies, but also just everybody with video, that we realize this. We provide, in the end, we all provide technology components, so that they can bring their content to their end users, which they can then monetize. If the business model doesn't work for them, if they can't make profit on top of all those components, then there's no business. So I think having not having less dependency on big hardware projects and more cloud-based infrastructure helps them there.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I mean, with AWS, we talk to our customers, and we very much focus on the needs of our customers as it relates to, operating the infrastructure. And so a big part of what we talk to them about is taking away the undifferentiated heavy lifting of running a data center or standing up a network operations center. And so as William was talking about, having these services on demand where you can start pay as you go and stand up a new service and innovate much more quickly on behalf of your customers and devote more of your time and resource to actually your core business of delivering content to end customers. We're hopefully accelerating and lowering the barriers to getting into the video market or doing new innovative things with video. I also can see the same kind of value proposition for Zype. I mean, you're taking away a lot of the uncertainties and difficulties in the build to get a reliable, secure, effective customer experience out to the marketplace.
Yeah, I've really seen a shift in conversations where, we are built like API first, and we're a very API driven platform, where, conversations pre-COVID-19 were, oh, we have time, like, let's look at the APIs, let's build it from the ground up. Well, we can build whatever we want. And now it's like, oh, wait, you leverage, the world-class providers, and you already have then the UX or the UI for all these. But if we want to, it's accessible via API, it's almost like a value add versus, the first thing they look for. So it is interesting to kind of see the shift in priorities, timelines, needs. And I think we are making it easier at Zype, AWS, TO, like across, because I think even though there aren't many standards in our industry today, and we're working on, creating those together, I think we have a really good foundation that, the players that have been in the space for a while, we have really key learning lessons to share. And so, the companies that are just getting involved in cloud infrastructure, in streaming, we've kind of, I don't know if it's so much the wild, wild west anymore. Like it's kind of establishing itself, and we can pass on those kind of learnings and the platform that we've been building for so long.
Yeah, I mean, we really try and champion innovation. And William, you made a point earlier about live events and concerts. I'm curious what you guys are seeing around those kinds of events that you think is particularly innovative.
Yeah, like as you may know, Belgium is known very much for its festivals, and like we have Tomorrowland and Rock Werchter, some of the world's most known brands. And they in the past they had some streaming on their website, but now literally the whole summer is canceled. So both them as well as app providers of those festivals are reaching out to us, like, how can I set up a streaming infrastructure so we can maybe think of having, for example, I know that Tomorrowland is doing that. They are just pulling streams of just DJs filming themselves at home and then pulling them after each other like that. They have like a lineup of 10 DJs for a Friday evening. And yeah, it will spark ideas to be innovative in the summer. Maybe the festivals can still continue, but with just all online and maybe with small parties at people's homes. I don't know. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, and then I think maybe
How
on
about,
the, yeah.
I was going to say, how about you,
Oh,
Alexander?
in terms of music festivals and live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's live has definitely taken I think a front seat as people are craving human connection and craving experiences. And I think there's only so many seasons of Tiger King that people want to see some live content. So we've seen an increase in live charity shows, concerts. I think this is going to be a
Yeah.
really unique turning point for new organizations to come up to produce at-home concerts that I'm seeing. So it's exciting to see what people and companies are creating. We had the opportunity to get involved in a charity event where we did a full day live stream, and so I think again giving back and being able to provide something that is needed that then benefits people who are out of work. I think there's just so many avenues that being able to monetize live streams tries to make that as easy as possible. But then I do think on the flip side, you know, because we don't have standards and because there's the RTMP, HLS, OTT, like we have our own language. I do think it does make it a little bit difficult to adopt like a new business model. So I think I'm having conversations where we can maybe talk in our jargon and understand one another quite well. It's almost making our messaging accessible across industries and across use cases. So I think that could be a one that we're not making it as easy as we have our own language.
No, that
Sure. Yeah.
if I can continue on that one is definitely true because historically over the last years, the media and entertainment companies, the media organizations, they were all already using a streaming infrastructure, right? They knew our language, but when now with Corona and other segments looking at this technology providers in the streaming world, and they expect like almost a YouTube experience, right? Where can I upload my MP4s and you bring it to my website? All while a lot of the companies in the industry, we all provide different components and together make a sort of solution like that, or we ask the customer to do the integration, or we partner with each other to bring a solution to the market like that. Yeah, I think we can definitely learn from this crisis that a lot of segments can benefit from companies partnering and having an end-to-end solution almost. I don't know how you see that, Ian.
Oh, I do. I mean, I think we see a lot of companies now who are looking at this opportunity and saying, well, one, how do I get more content into the hands of my consumers? And can I repurpose content I already have? So, I mean, live is one direction. And obviously there's lots going on in bringing those live events to bear. But same time, as production has shut down and companies are now looking at how do I continue to evolve and engage customers, I think there's lots of opportunity to mine your archives and come, bring new things to market, even if they're mashups or you've kind of built a new framework around it to highlight it because they're monetization opportunities.
Yeah. I think the biggest example, and it's probably even more popular in US, is The Last Dance on Netflix and ESPN, right? The documentary on Michael Jordan. It's like normally it was being released, I think June or after the basketball season, but now they brought it earlier because there's no live sports, and I think the numbers are skyrocketing. Everybody's watching it, and it's great. So yeah, it's every disadvantage has its advantage.
There are definitely a lot of eyeballs that need entertainment, whether it's live or VOD stitched to be like live. That's been a large focus at Zype, I'd say, in the past few quarters, is creating, a solution to leverage, archived assets or VOD assets and be able to repurpose them, monetize them across, your own platform or partners. So I definitely agree.
Yep.
Simulated live and live, are both hot ticket items. Any other final thoughts? I think we have one more little, discussion point. I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Sure.
Right. I think it's kind of all encompassing and takes us back to really the intro to this. Ian, I think you had mentioned that, consumption and engagement is really just skyrocketed since people are locked in at homes. And so there's a number of sources that say like streaming to TVs has more than doubled during the pandemic. And I'm curious to kind of talk about, what the long-term effects of this increase in engagement will be. Personally, I think, I'm seeing it from product innovation standpoints, and how do we build, more intuitive products for our customers to maintain and to keep these consumers that they've acquired over this time, and what does retention look like? What does new content look like? So I think, the long-term effects go well beyond, the number of viewers that we have on a screen. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, what new players come about, who partners, what integrates, what new solutions will there be? So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so one of the things I think will be interesting to see is now, as you mentioned, there's no live sports, or there's no traditional live sports. And now with esports, there's a huge opportunity to go capture some of that attention from people who probably weren't naturally inclined to go watch esports, but still want live action and that sense of following along with the team or the player that you like. And so I would be curious to see how much crossover they retain as real sports come back online, I think.
Yeah, true. Like you mentioned, the increase in engagements, it's not only short term now because it has to almost, because like for example, the older generation, right? I think our industry with younger people adapted streaming pretty well. But I think like when I look at my parents, for example, they were not the biggest users of online video because even already Skype and Zoom were sometimes not easy to set up. While right now they have to do it, and that's on the and so they get more acquainted with using online video. So they will, I think, in the future will be less reluctant on maybe downloading a streaming app or something else. And that's on the consumption side, but also on the production side. For example, in Belgium, we have this big sporting event, the Tour of Flanders. I don't know if you're a bit into it, but it couldn't happen because of COVID. So there were a few Belgian companies, also like Kisway. I don't know if you know them. They made a sort of virtual Tour of Flanders where they put cameras. I don't know if it were iPhones or Android phones or real cameras on the cycler, and they produced like an almost in the cloud production of the riders, and it was a virtual Tour of Flanders, and the numbers in Belgium who watched it were really high, and I think it had some attention online. So it's like you mentioned, the product innovation, it's going to be one of the biggest advantages of this time.
I also think it's interesting how it may shift our acceptance of production values. You've got people now broadcasting over linear television, mobile video feeds that are sometimes pixelated, or the lighting's not great, and people are doing their own makeup. And we've come to just say, well, that's okay. We accept that, versus, everything being pristine and the lighting being just right and the people all being beautiful. And it's not to say that's how they're going to make, the next episode of Stranger Things, but it's certainly that they're going to have a lot more opportunity for people to be mobile, be remote, and bring in user-generated content or the equivalent.
I'm gonna
Not
agree
enough.
with that. Yeah, I think the Saturday Night Live, the first from home one had some of the best ratings, where it is interesting to think about, if it's not then the production value, no, no offense to, these production teams that work so hard and produce these amazing shows, but I think it really is more so about the content and the substance of that content, versus you know the filters on it, if you will, for lack of a better word. So I think that's an interesting point.
The mention of not enough light, is that a I won't take that pun, Ian. No offense taken. Maybe for the watchers, it's good to understand that I'm currently in Europe and not yet in New York due to Corona, so that's why it's a bit darker here.
No,
No, but you're fully right. It's funny to see in Belgium a lot of ministers and politicians being clearly on a bad internet connection and streaming very pixelated videos of themselves. It might give a shift in the thinking of people.
right.
And that's a good point too, though. We've done a lot of work across a lot of different verticals, and houses of worship and faith-based communities have done a lot to invest already in video infrastructure and being able to broadcast to parishioners. And I think, if there's some goodwill that's come out of this, it's knowing that we're making it possible for people to have that kind of comfort in their own homes, because, you're really still not able to go and have the kind of fellowship that I think a lot of people really crave. And it's not a perfect substitute, but it certainly provides a more visceral experience than you would if it was simply just having read a letter or some other recap.
Yeah, and maybe one final thought that I had, because it was nice, Ian, that you mentioned it, that people take less quality production as okay, but on the other hand, it will also drive innovation, that there will be other companies wanting to have the more remote from home experience, almost same as broadcast, right? So that can spark some innovation as well.
Agreed on the innovation piece. And I actually think, seeing this engagement, which, you can translate that to be usage, if we're looking at it from a billing cycle, I think that the effects of that is really going to be a need and a demand for transparency around this usage pricing and understanding, again, I think it was mentioned earlier in the chat of this spike in engagement and usage. Well, then where does that price threshold go, and how do you maintain and adapt a business model to kind of go with the fluctuation of the market and the world situation? So I think engagement, usage, billing, I think, is going to be something that people are thinking a lot more about, and each gigabyte, I think, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, and so we work quite extensively with our partners on cost optimizations, especially on behalf of the end customers, and going through the best practices around cloud development and the programs that we can bring for helping people understand not only how to secure content, but how you spin up and spin down infrastructure, how you provide serverless and auto scaling, and then how you can optimize for costs, whether it's through reserved instances or other techniques. Cost containment and cost reduction is a huge focus because, for a lot of companies getting started, the uncertainty of what it's going to cost is still something that gives them pause. And so we want to make sure, as much as possible, we're giving our partners and our end customers the tools to make this as cost effective as possible.
Echo that completely, and it's something that I think all of us on the call can feel really proud and good about, that we want to provide the best solution at the best price that we can. And that's why having partners it is so important, to be able to offer the solution that the customer needs at the price point that makes sense for everyone, especially in a competitive market where there's a huge increase in need. Well, I think
Thank
that's
you.
kind of the last of my, kind of talking points. If there's anything else that, we want to discuss, happy to walk through it with you guys. But I'm so appreciative of you guys joining. I'm excited to get to see you guys in person again at our next maybe in-person panel or discussion.
Yeah,
True.
well, maybe
Likewise.
in a few months we'll see each other in New York again.
Right.
True.
I think that sounds like a good reunion moment.
True. Let's get a coffee then.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, you guys.